They moved in without a past and vanished without a trace. No bodies, no footprints, just mirrors that still haven't stopped whispering. Welcome to the story that was never meant to be remembered. In the village of Aylesford, tucked between two hills smothered in fog and silence, the Whitlock house had always stood apart. Not because it was grand. It wasn't. The whitewash peeled, the shutters sagged like tired eyes, and the garden had long surrendered to weeds. But it was the only house in the village where you could hear your own breath from the road, even in daylight. No birds, no wind, just stillness. On the morning of January 8, 1921, that silence deepened. The chimney smoked faintly, tea steeped on the kitchen table, and loaves of bread sat sliced beside bowls of jam. But the Whitlocks were gone, all of them. 2 adults, 3 children. Coats still hung by the door. The father's boots, well worn and muddied from the dairy, remained by the mat. The youngest child's rag doll was cradled against the stairs. But the hearth was cold, and no one answered when neighbors knocked. Mrs. Calder, who lived 2 doors down, was the first to sense something was wrong. "The dog stopped barking," she said later. "That mongrel always howled when the postman came, but that morning, nothing. Just the creak of my bones and that dreadful silence." Police arrived by dusk. Constable Merely had to break the lock. The front door wasn't barricaded, just secured from the inside. Every window sealed. No signs of struggle. No broken glass, no blood, just an absence, the kind that made your teeth ache. In the sitting room, a record spun slowly with the needle lifted. The clock had frozen at 4:17. You're probably asking, how can a family just vanish? With no screams, no struggle, no trace. But here's the thing, sometimes silence is the struggle. And if you've been drawn to this channel, you already sense that not all disappearances are random. Some are allowed. Welcome to Whispers in the Cellar, where we tell the stories institutions won't. If you're someone who doesn't flinch at forgotten horrors, hit like, tap subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a secret clawing its way back into the light. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Has your town buried a story like this one? Something that everyone knows, but no one dares say aloud. Because once we start pulling threads like this, you might be surprised at what starts to remember itself. Now, back to Devon. The Whitlocks weren't outsiders. They were the church-going kind. Punctual, soft-spoken. James Whitlock worked deliveries for the Bickley Creamery. His wife Margaret had a voice like boiled sugar and played organ at the Sunday services. Their 3 children, Clara, age 10, Henry, age 8, and Rose, just 5, were quiet, obedient, maybe too quiet. The week before they vanished, something changed. Clara hadn't turned in her school poem, unusual for a girl who once cried over a lost gold star. Henry had started talking to the fireplace. Rose refused to sit facing the cellar door, even when coaxed with sweets. And Margaret had stopped playing the organ. One neighbor remembered the last time she heard it. The hymn wasn't from their parish's book. No one could place it. The notes were slow, almost reversed. It sounded like something praying through her, someone whispered. None of that made it into the official report. Of course not. What did get written down was this. Residents appeared undisturbed. Dinner table set for 5. Potatoes boiled dry in the pan. Bible open on kitchen counter. Psalms 88. Go look it up. Psalms 88 is the only psalm that ends without hope. No light, no redemption. Just abandonment. The cellar door was open. Lanterns searched every corner. No signs of life or death. But there was a faint smell, not rot, not mold, more like iron. And here's the detail you won't forget. On the upstairs landing, tucked behind the hall mirror, officers found 5 silver hairpins, arranged in a circle. Inside the circle, a single, smooth stone, still warm. Some claimed later the house had been cursed. Others said the land was once pagan and the Whitlocks had dug too deep, physically or spiritually. But it's what came next that twisted this from tragedy into something more orchestrated. Within days, every mention of the family disappeared from town ledgers. Their pew in church was left empty, then removed entirely. Clara's name vanished from the school attendance book. Their milk deliveries were reassigned without inquiry, as if the village had rehearsed for this, as if forgetting them was part of the deal. Yet someone remembered. In 1954, a letter surfaced, unsigned, brittle, and water-stained. It had been stuffed behind a loose brick in the old vicarage, discovered by a boy helping his grandfather fix the roof. It read, "They did not go quietly. They were taken quietly, and we let it happen. We agreed to the silence. We agreed because the bells were tolling before the hour. We were told not to open the cellar again." The letter ended with a symbol, not a name. A loop with 2 strikes through it. Some say it's the sigil of an ancient saint. Others think it's older, pre-Christian, a binding mark. One thing's certain. This wasn't just a disappearance. It was a ritual. And this was only the first act. By the spring of 1921, the Whitlock house had become a boundary, not just between the village and the moors, but between what could be spoken and what had to remain implied. Children crossed the road when walking past it. Mail was no longer delivered directly to the door, and not one soul in Aylesford would so much as glance at the top bedroom window after nightfall. They didn't need to. By then, they all knew what they'd see. A single light, flickering, as if someone was still there. Constable Merely returned twice more unofficially. The first time, he brought Reverend Shale. The second, he came alone and left shaken, soaked with sweat despite the cold. He never said what he saw. He just left his badge and revolver on the inspector's desk the following morning and took early retirement. It was the Reverend who broke silence. Barely. One Sunday sermon, he stammered through the first half of Matthew 5, then froze. He looked out at the congregation, eyes glassy, and muttered, "Blessed are those who forget, for they will not be taken." He was transferred to a parish in Essex 2 weeks later. In the village archives, there is no official mention of these events. No formal investigation into the disappearances beyond the original report. But in the Aylesford Parish Journal, kept by one Sister Lucinda, a midwife and lifelong recorder of local births, deaths, and divine abnormalities, a different story is preserved. Hidden in the back of her 1921 volume, beneath pasted-over pages and pressed heather leaves, she wrote the following entry. The Whitlocks were not lost. They were claimed. The third bell tolled not at 4:17 p.m., but 4:17 a.m. That is when the house went still. That is when the mirror cracked from inside. She then adds something peculiar. The child left behind was not theirs. There was never any official record of a child being found, but several villagers, years later, recalled seeing a boy standing on the edge of the moors a few days after the family's disappearance. Alone, barefoot, pale but unharmed. One shepherd, Elias Griggs, said the boy had eyes like wet ash and was humming, not a tune exactly, more like mimicry, as if he was trying to remember how a song went but had never heard one before. No one knew his name. No one claimed him. and after a few weeks he was simply gone. Some said a family from Kent took him in. Others whispered that the boy walked back to the house one night, and it opened for him. Let's pause here. I want you to think about something. Why would a community, good, God-fearing people, erase a family from memory? Why would a child with no name be seen as a threat? And why would a vicar, a constable, and a midwife all suggest, in their own way, that something ancient and chosen had occurred? It wasn't just fear, it was debt. Because 5 years before the Whitlocks vanished, something else happened in Aylesford. Something that's only been found in fragments. A letter. A burial record. A series of notes scratched into the underside of a chapel pew. Together, they tell a different kind of story. One the village owed for. In October 1916, during the war, a shipment of German prisoners was redirected through Aylesford by train. An engine failure. A cold night. The village opened its doors to 20 soldiers for one evening. Records confirm this. But of those 20, only 19 left. The 20th was a young man, no more than 20, who spoke little English and was said to draw strange symbols into the frost on windows. The children found him fascinating. The adults did not. 2 nights later, he was gone. According to the burial record, a body without kin or clergy was interred behind the chapel. No name, no marker. Sister Lucinda's entry is more revealing. We did not understand what we had done. He was not ordinary. The birds stopped singing. The clocks lost time. And the dogwood bloomed in October. We broke something that night. And just below that, Mrs. Whitlock brought the bread. She was the only one who stayed when the digging began. You begin to see it now, don't you? This was not a random horror, it was a circle. 5 years after the burial, 5 people vanished. The bread, the digging, the prayers, all remembered by those who should have forgotten. And whatever was buried behind the chapel wasn't done with them. But this is where the trail should have ended. Except it didn't. Because in 1981, 60 years later, the house was sold. Not to a family, but to a historian named Dr. Ellis Fan. A man who specialized in English ecclesiastical anomalies. He wasn't from Aylesford. He had no idea what he was walking into. He lasted exactly 23 nights. On the 24th, neighbors reported the front door wide open at dawn. Inside, they found his notes. Pages upon pages of scribbled research, maps, photographs of the moors. But no Dr. Fan. The most chilling was a single typewritten page, found beneath the kettle, still warm. It read, "They weren't taken in the night. They left before it arrived. Because they heard the tolling that no one else could. I heard it too. I'm going to try and follow." The police closed the case after 72 hours. Voluntary disappearance, they said. But here's the part no one explains. The house locked itself. Every window, door, even the cellar, sealed from within. And on the stairs, in the same spot where the rag doll had once been left, lay a single silver hairpin, warm to the touch, as if someone had come back, as if the house remembered. They say England forgets slowly. But in the case of the Whitlocks, Aylesford forgot too quickly and too thoroughly. After 1921, no further mentions of the family appeared in census records, school logs, or chapel rosters. Their names were never spoken in the open again. The local historian who took over after Dr. Fan once noted, "It's as if 5 names were plucked clean from the parchment of God." But parchment has memory, even when ink fades, and sometimes it leaks. In 2006, nearly a century after the disappearance, a letter was discovered in the hollow wall of an outbuilding on the Whitlock property. It was found by 2 university students conducting an architectural survey of abandoned religious sites. The letter was brittle, water-damaged, and written in hurried, uneven script on the back of a chapel hymnal page. It read, "If you are reading this, do not stay past dusk. The floor remembers our weight. The walls know our names. The bell will toll once for each of us. I heard it twice already. God forgive me. I fear I was not the last." The letter was signed only with an initial, R. There was no Whitlock family member with that initial, but in a separate school ledger from 1919, a boy named Reginald Harrow is listed as a boarder with the family. 11 years old, no living relatives, sent to live with the Whitlocks during a long illness. He was never seen again after the incident. Why wasn't his name included in any of the records? Why didn't Sister Lucinda or the Reverend mention him? And more disturbingly, why did he think he was the last? Reginald's handwriting, according to forensic analysts, matched a small series of carvings found beneath the windowsill in the top bedroom of the house. The carvings formed a simple pattern. 1 line, then 2, then 3, then none, over and over again. Deepened, etched, as if made with a nail or broken comb. Some believe it was a tally, others say it was a warning, or a ritual. But those 4 lines became a symbol, one that would later appear again in a place no one expected. The parish school. In 2011, a teacher named Janice Malley was cataloging old school furniture before renovation. She found, beneath the lip of a child's desk from the 1920s, the same 4-line carving. In the wood, faint but unmistakable. Next to it, written in pencil long faded to gray, "He lives in the 3rd toll, but only if you listen." Malley submitted a formal report to the council. They dismissed it as vandalism or coincidental pareidolia, seeing patterns where there were none. The desk was burned with the rest of the unusable inventory. But it was too late. Aylesford had tried to bury the past with silence, and the past had started to rot. In 2014, a local podcast team, the Hollow Earth Collective, visited the village for a Halloween episode titled The Vanished. They were amateur ghost hunters, the kind who normally exaggerated bumps in the night and creaky stairs for clicks. But their footage from Aylesford was different, because halfway through the recording, their equipment stopped. Every microphone cut, every digital recorder failed, all at once, except one, a handheld camcorder with a cracked lens. The footage captured shows one of the hosts, Freddie Dunn, wandering alone in the overgrown garden behind the Whitlock home. The others had gone inside. Freddie calls out, laughing nervously, then stops. He turns. His expression shifts, from amusement to confusion, then blank. The tape captures 6 full seconds of silence. No wind, no birds, nothing. Just Freddie, staring past the camera. Then he whispers, 3. 3 tolls. The house is open now. The feed cuts, the next frame is static. None of them ever posted another episode. Freddie moved to New Zealand. 2 members of the team deleted their social media and refused interviews. One, Elise Cartwright, briefly resurfaced in a 2019 blog post under the pseudonym Ash Hallow. In it, she writes, "He stood between us, not behind, not ahead, between, where a person shouldn't fit. We didn't see him walk, he was just there, and when he smiled, I remembered a dream I hadn't had yet." She took the post down within 24 hours. But internet being what it is, someone archived it, and someone else noticed something strange. The description of the man they saw in the garden. Barefoot, ash-colored eyes, humming, the same as the boy from 1921. If it was the same being, he hadn't aged. And that's when a theory emerged, one chilling enough that even skeptics paused. What if the boy was never lost? What if he was the reason they disappeared? A conduit, a key? Not a victim, but a door? You see, in Old English folklore there are stories, scattered across Devonshire, Cornwall, even parts of Yorkshire, of what they used to call tolling spirits. Not ghosts, not demons, but echoes, entities that only moved when a sound was repeated 3 times. A bell, a name, a knock. The third call was their invitation, their permission. And what if, on that night in 1921, something echoed inside that house? A prayer repeated, a child crying out the same word, or a bell that only some could hear. The Whitlocks were alone, but not in silence. The villagers heard nothing. The floorboards, however, those remembered everything. And whatever walked through that memory, it left the door ajar. Ask yourself, why does no one buy that land? Why does every photo of the property, no matter the angle, show something wrong with the window upstairs? Why do dogs refuse to cross the gate? Because forgetting is protection, and remembering is permission. But there's one more thing, one more whisper from the past that resurfaced. A letter, undated, unsigned, was mailed to the Aylesford Library in 2021. No return address, just a note, scrawled on yellowed paper. It's been 100 years. We paid once. We'll pay again. There are 5 tolls left. No one knows what it means. But Sister Lucinda, back in 1921, wrote something else beneath her final entry. Nearly illegible now, scratched faintly with the tip of a quill on the edge of the back cover. God forgives those who sleep, but he does not protect those who listen. And the house? The house hasn't creaked in years, because it is waiting. By the time 2022 arrived, the Whitlock property had been renamed 5 separate times by estate agents. Each attempt meant to strip away the weight of the past. The listing would appear under bright euphemisms: Victorian character home with historical charm, or chapel-adjacent residence with original architecture. But every listing vanished quietly, withdrawn without explanation. Not a single buyer followed through. Not because of cost, not because of disrepair, but because every surveyor, every one of them, refused to set foot in the attic. One, a veteran contractor named Robert Keene, submitted a written complaint to the council after his visit. "I don't know what you're running out there," he wrote, "but I've served in the Falklands. I've rebuilt morgues. I've worked beside men who didn't come home. And I have never felt something look at me the way that house did. It knows you're there before you knock. It doesn't want to be sold. It wants to be left alone." He never returned to Aylesford. But perhaps the most disturbing piece of evidence to surface came from a place no one expected: a sound archive in Bristol. A graduate student named Meredith Shaw, working on a thesis about pre-war Anglican hymns, came across an unlabeled wax cylinder dated March 1921. It had been misfiled under maritime recordings and stored in a temperature-controlled vault. When she played it, expecting sea shanties or port sermons, she instead heard bells. 3 distinct tolls, unevenly spaced, followed by distant, panicked breathing, and then singing. Not hymnal, not coherent, just a child's voice, repeating a phrase, almost chanting. One by day, one by name, one by fire, all the same. The voice is young, male, English. But what shook Meredith wasn't the content, it was the background noise. After the 3rd toll, you can hear wood splintering, then a rhythmic tapping, like fingernails against glass, then silence, then a 4th toll, That wasn't on the wax. That happened in the room. She dropped the stylus, ran from the archive, quit her program 2 weeks later and refused to publish her findings. But another student, curious, listened to the same recording weeks later and heard nothing. No tolls, no child, just blank hiss. That cylinder has since gone missing. This is where myth meets madness, where believers see patterns and skeptics see coincidence. But a final layer of this story began unraveling when a local genealogist named Ewan Carter started researching the Whitlock family tree in 2023. He wasn't hunting ghosts. He was hunting paper trails, and he found one. Tucked inside a marriage ledger from 1904, Ewan discovered that Margaret Whitlock, the matriarch, was not born a Whitlock at all. Her maiden name was Gessler. That surname appears in exactly 3 other historical references. A burned-out convent in Austria, 1876, whose last abbess was named Adela Gessler. No survivors. A coal mining tragedy in northern Wales, 1892. Of the 33 dead, only 1 woman was listed among the casualties, Agnes Gessler. Her body was never recovered. A weather journal from Devon, dated 1858, which notes, "Unusual storm surge near the coast. Wreckage scattered. Woman's body found. No eyes, labeled Gessler, per locket engraving." 3 women, 3 endings, 1 name. Margaret had lied about her origins. And if the Gesslers were more than just an obscure bloodline, if they carried something with them, a curse or covenant, then her presence in Aylesford was no accident. She brought something with her. The land, the chapel, even the boy named Reginald. What if they were tools? Or worse, sacrifices? We know this. Before the disappearance, Margaret ordered 3 things from a traveling seller. Records show a transaction dated February 11, 1921, signed by her. A silver hand mirror with a broken handle. A book titled Canticles for the Dead, no publisher listed. A child's toy. A bell rattle made of wood and bone. The seller, whose name is only recorded as Mr. Alwick, disappeared 6 weeks later. No other sales under his name ever occurred again. No address, no birth record, nothing. Only the 3 items. And all 3 were found during the 1984 excavation of the Whitlock cellar. Preserved, wrapped in cloth, as if buried intentionally. The mirror was facing inward. The book's pages were blank, except for one. The first, "What is remembered may return. What is spoken 3 times cannot be unspoken. The house is a gate. The gate is a promise. The promise is hungry." As for the bell rattle, it still made no sound. Until it did. The night it was brought to the Aylesford Historical Society, a volunteer named Grace Miller was assigned to catalog the artifacts. Around 3:00 a.m., she recorded an audio memo. In it, she sounds composed until the last 30 seconds. She whispers, "I didn't shake it. I swear I didn't. But it rang, once, then again." And then the mirror fell off the wall. That was the last recording she ever submitted. Grace quit the society the next morning. Moved to Canada. Left behind her phone, her cat, and her car keys. No note, no message. Her last Google search? Third toll meaning religious folklore. Some say it's coincidence. Others say the Whitlocks never truly left. They say the house doesn't just remember, it collects. And in 2024, a chilling new entry appeared in the Aylesford Town Council's complaints ledger. A woman named Elsie Dowling, visiting from Birmingham, reported an odd occurrence at the edge of the Whitlock fence. "I heard laughter. Children, then a bell. I looked through the window, and I swear to God I saw myself, but I wasn't moving. I was watching me." She collapsed shortly after. No medical condition was diagnosed, but she refused to speak the rest of her stay. And when she left, she posted a single sentence to a paranormal forum under an anonymous handle. "It tolls for who you were, not who you are." A new question has begun circling online, one that seems absurd at first, until you hear the patterns. Why do so many people who visit Aylesford report dreams about bells? Why do they wake up at 3:17 a.m. exactly? Why do some claim to remember things they've never lived? Because maybe the Whitlocks didn't vanish. Maybe they bled into the walls, into the floorboards, into the air. Maybe when they rang the third toll, they weren't calling something in. They were calling us out. And each echo since, it's not just a haunting, it's an invitation. Next time you hear 3 knocks on your door, don't answer. Because the 4th knock isn't knocking at all. It's remembering you. On April 12, 2024, a small team of documentarians from Leeds arrived in Aylesford to film a short, independent piece about vanishing families in English folklore. Their budget was modest, their intention harmless, a blend of art school ambition and regional mystery. The director, Claire Renshaw, had chosen the Whitlock case purely for its thematic richness. She didn't believe in hauntings. She believed in psychology, repressed trauma, mass suggestion. Her plan was to interview local residents, shoot B-roll of the property from outside the gate, and wrap in 3 days. They never made it to day 3. Their footage was recovered from a water-damaged SD card found in a duffel bag near the Aylesford Canal. Most of it was unusable, distorted, frames skipping, the audio warped like tape under heat. But one sequence, just 49 seconds long, plays with disturbing clarity. It shows Claire walking alone along the chapel's southern wall, her phone flashlight illuminating warped ivy and faded stone. She stops, turns to face the camera, and whispers, "There's someone standing in the window." The camera pans to the second story. No one is visible. Then Claire speaks again, her voice trembling. "They're mimicking me." She raises her hand, and so does the figure in the window, but reversed, like a mirror image. Then static. The rest of the crew was found later that night, disoriented and drenched despite dry weather. They were wandering near the old Aylesford post road, barefoot and incoherent. When asked where Claire was, they said only, "She stayed behind. She had to finish something." Claire has never been found. The team refused to comment further. The documentary was shelved. And the footage. It's been uploaded and deleted at least 6 times across various fringe forums. Each time it's reposted, something changes. One viewer claims Claire's voice sounds slower. Another says the window figure starts to look more like the cameraman. In one version, the bell rings 4 times instead of 3. People have started calling it the mirror clip. Others call it a warning. But if you trace the origins of the Whitlock mystery further back, before Claire, before the Gessler bloodline, even before the house, you reach something more elusive. Something almost wiped clean from record. The land. You see, Aylesford wasn't always Aylesford. In 1792, the parish went by another name, Harthill Hollow. It was a small rural settlement with only a dozen families, most of them tenant farmers or coal haulers. One of the earliest surviving ledgers from that period includes a notation in the margin of a church census. 2 children lost to the hollow, 1 returned, the wrong one. That single line led an archivist in Kent named Douglas Merriweather to begin a personal investigation in 2007. He believed Harthill Hollow may have had its own suppressed tragedy, one that predated the Whitlocks but shared disturbing characteristics. He found a letter, preserved in a private estate sale, dated 1793, and written by Reverend Thomas Willoughby of Canterbury. "I have seen the child," it reads. "It carries his face, speaks in his tone, even answers to the name. But it is not the same. The mother won't acknowledge this, but the dog will not go near him. The mirror cracked when he passed." Merewether's conclusion: that Aylesford was built atop a much older legend, one that never made it into formal folklore because it was buried intentionally by the church. A second account, this one from 1810, appears in the form of a diary entry from a midwife named Eliza Harrow, who serviced the region's families. "The boy is pale and silent and always watching. I birthed him once, but this one is colder. His feet leave no steam upon the window glass. And last night the bell in my drawer rang thrice, though untouched." So we begin to see the outlines of something deeper, something uncontained by time. A pattern, 3 bells, one child changed, mirrors cracking, and always the same location. Harthill Hollow became Aylesford in 1831, following a series of unexplained fires. The new name was meant to signify a new beginning, with the parish council erecting a chapel over the old hollow. That chapel, of course, would later sit behind the Whitlock property. And inside that chapel, in the foundation stones, was found something no one expected. In 1997, during renovations to convert the chapel into a storage facility for council records, workmen uncovered a shallow cavity in the floor beneath the pulpit. Inside was a stone box containing a shard of blackened mirror, a small cloth bell with stitching missing, a child's tooth, still bloody, wrapped in old wool. No official report was ever filed. The items were allegedly discarded. But one of the workmen, Malcolm Green, took a photograph before the box was removed. That photo has been passed around the darker corners of the internet, sometimes accompanied by audio recordings, sometimes with timestamps that seem inconsistent with reality. In one instance, the tooth appears to be missing from the photo entirely, until the next refresh when it returns. Malcolm reportedly suffered a nervous breakdown 6 months later. He claimed he was being watched through reflective surfaces. He died in 2003. His death certificate lists heart failure. His last written note? "It has my eyes now." So what are we to make of this? A land that forgets nothing, a chapel raised to silence an ancient breach, families drawn in like moths to a wound disguised as home, and always the bells. 3 tolls, always 3. Until someone listens long enough to hear the 4th. And now, as recent as 2024, those whispers have begun again. People who walk past the old Whitlock property report unusual reflections in puddles. Tourists report hearing their names spoken in empty rooms, and 3 separate visitors, unrelated, unaware of each other, have submitted identical reports to the Kent Paranormal Society. Each claim the same dream. Each say they wake at 3:17 a.m., heart racing, hands cold. And each describe a staircase. It's always the same. A narrow wooden staircase, too many steps for the size of the house, going down, not up, and at the bottom, not darkness, but a mirror, full length, old frame, covered in dust. When asked what they see in the mirror, none of them answer at first, but all of them give the same final reply. "It was waiting for me." There's no logic here that science can parse, only a pattern, a warning, and a town that was renamed not to begin again, but to forget what it had allowed in. But history doesn't forget, and the land never sleeps, because maybe the Whitlocks were never victims. Maybe they were the latest caretakers, and maybe their disappearance wasn't an escape. It was a merging, one more toll in a chorus of echoes that has never really stopped. the only question left now. When it tolls next, will it be your name it calls, or your reflection that finally answers? In the spring of 2026, nearly a year after Alvin Groves vanished from public record, a series of anonymously uploaded documents appeared on a message board frequented by urban explorers and architectural historians. The posts were sparse, just scans of old maintenance logs, inspection reports, and photographs. Yet each one had a chilling signature in the metadata, MER 0731. Some dismissed it as creepypasta. Others, particularly archivists and local history buffs, took it more seriously. The documents all pertained to one building, Whitlock House, but not the stately manor from old photos. This was a structure beneath it, a substructure no one had ever acknowledged before. The logs were dated 1953 to 1971. They described the inspection of Level 2 beneath the house: concrete chambers, rusted ladders, antechambers with sloped flooring. One entry from November 1962 read, "Audible phenomena at 3:17 a.m., metallic ringing, like spoon tapping on porcelain. No source found. East corridor light bulbs shattered on approach. Left immediately. Will request team support next visit." None of the entries bore real names. All were initialed, CM. One image, taken in 1965, showed a corridor lined with mirrors. They weren't decorative. Each one was built into the wall, flush with the stone. But instead of reflecting the camera or the person holding it, every mirror showed only a hallway. The same hallway, the same perspective. As if they weren't mirrors at all, but windows looking into a different version of the same corridor. In one, just barely visible at the edge of the frame, was the figure of a woman, not walking, just standing, with her hands at her sides. No shoes, her head tilted at an unnatural angle, as if listening to something the lens couldn't catch. Somehow, this image had a date stamp matching the day the Whitlocks were reported missing, April 6, 1965. The forum was eventually taken down. The files vanished, but not before one user, under the handle Marin54, downloaded every post. He later uploaded them to a decentralized archive. His account bio said only, "My grandmother was Clara." Meanwhile, an archivist named Henry Trellick, working in Kent, stumbled upon a strange footnote in the Regional Death Index. 4 entries, all dated April 10, 1965, 4 days after the Whitlocks disappeared, listed the following: female, unknown, estimated age 14. Male, unknown, estimated age 12. Female, unknown, estimated age 10. Adult male, unknown, estimated age 40 to 45. Each one listed presumed cause of death, systemic hypothermia, and location as undetermined. All were filed under a single coroner's number 263 BUM. But no bodies had ever been logged, no autopsies filed. The entries appeared only in a carbon duplicate log stored in a box misfiled under property tax appeals. The original records were missing. Trellick tried to escalate the finding, sending the images to the Home Office and the Kent County Council. 2 weeks later, he was placed on administrative leave for violating archival protocol and accessing unsecured sensitive materials. A month later, his flat was found empty. His door locked from the inside, lights still on, kettle still warm. On his desk, a single sticky note. ARALS is looking. Now, let's return to the Whitlocks' final known day. April 6, 1965. There was a report filed, not by a neighbor, not by family, but by a passing meter reader named Alan Horn. In his handwritten statement, Horn noted that as he walked past the Whitlock home at 3:30 p.m., he saw a girl standing perfectly still at the upstairs window. She was wearing what he described as an Easter dress, though the holiday had passed. She wasn't waving, he wrote. She wasn't watching me. She was watching her reflection. Just standing there staring at herself. He thought it odd, but not alarming. Children did strange things. What made him stop, though, was the sound. I was halfway down the lane when I heard something. 3 sharp knocks, like knuckles rapping wood, then silence. Then it happened again, but the sound came from behind me, like someone knocking on glass from the inside. He turned. The girl was gone. The curtain was drawn. That evening, no one answered the door when the postman came. The milk bottles weren't taken in the next morning. By noon, a neighbor walked over. The door was ajar. No Whitlocks. No sign of struggle. No sign of anything. Just the scent of lavender soap, and something faintly metallic in the air. By the time authorities conducted their search, the trail had gone cold. Dogs brought in from Maidstone refused to enter the house. One reportedly convulsed upon reaching the second stair. Another ran circles around the property, whining, as if unable to find the scent's end. A photo taken during the search shows 2 constables standing outside the Whitlock home. But look closely. In the upstairs window, where the girl had been seen, is a faint shape, barely perceptible. A smudge. Zoom in, and it doesn't look like a face. It looks like a mask. Blank. Porcelain, not placed there, reflected there. As if something inside the house, something with no face of its own, was using the window as a costume. So, what now? What happens when a house remains vacant for decades, but never truly empty? What happens when mirror light isn't just a reflection, but an invitation? When something mimics us so well, we forget who's real. Perhaps that's the point. Perhaps the Whitlocks were never taken in the traditional sense. Perhaps they were replaced. One by one, until what stood in their place could wear their voices, sit at their tables, kiss their children, but never laugh, never cry, never cast a shadow. And maybe that's why the town stopped speaking of them. Because they did come back. Just not as themselves. And no one wanted to admit that. That sometimes a reflection steps out of the mirror, and what's left behind isn't empty. It's waiting. Of all the artifacts recovered from Whitlock House before its final sealing in 1971, only one remains publicly accessible. A child's diary, preserved at the East Kent Historical Society. It was found lodged behind a warped skirting board in the third-floor nursery. The paper was weather-stained, the ink faded in places, but the name written on the inside cover was unmistakable. Clara Whitlock. Its entries span only a few weeks, March through early April 1965, and end abruptly. At first glance, it reads like any 10-year-old's diary. Talk of lessons, a favorite dress, a secret crush on a boy from church. But woven between the mundane are flashes of something unnatural. March 18th. I woke up and the mirror was open again. Not cracked, not broken, just open. I told Mummy, but she said dreams can't make holes. I don't think she's right. March 21st. Peter keeps sleepwalking. Last night he walked all the way into the attic. Said someone called him, but we were all asleep. I heard him whispering up there. It wasn't his voice. March 24th. Something is wrong with Daddy. He smiled when there was no joke, just smiled, and didn't blink for a very long time. April 1st. Mummy started putting cloth over the mirrors. She says it's for Easter, but I know it's because they move now. They move when we're not looking. April 4. They're not us. The final entry is just 2 words, scrawled violently across the page. Not mirrors. Handwriting analysts later noted that Clara's penmanship in the last entry differed significantly from earlier entries. The letters were tighter, slanted, more angular, traits often associated with adult hands, not a child's. But no explanation was ever offered. Parallel to the diary's discovery, a curious figure emerged in connection with the case. Reverend Arthur Penryn, an Anglican priest and amateur folklorist with a reputation for collecting religious anomalies. Penryn had been quietly studying the Whitlock disappearance for over a decade, compiling notes, witness interviews, and theological commentary. He believed what happened at Whitlock House was not supernatural in the traditional sense, but preternatural. In a letter to the Archbishop of Canterbury dated July 2, 1973, Penryn wrote, "I fear we are dealing with not ghosts or demons, but something older. A rupture, a breach in the reflective veil. These entities do not haunt, they substitute. They mimic, yes, but they also discard. Once something has seen its reflection too many times, it becomes untethered. The soul thins. The echo takes root." Penryn was dismissed from his post in 1974 after several controversial sermons in which he publicly denounced the use of mirrors in sacred spaces. In one particularly infamous address, he claimed that Christ himself turned his face from the reflective veil and warned of those who wear our features like borrowed coats. He was later institutionalized. By the mid-1980s, public interest in the Whitlock case had waned. The house, structurally unsound and socially stigmatized, was sealed with reinforced steel and listed as condemned. A fire broke out in 1992, cause unknown, but only the garden shed and a portion of the back lawn were affected. Curiously, the house itself remained untouched, as if the flames refused to cross its threshold. Locals claimed the windows fogged during the fire, but from the inside. And in one photograph taken by a passerby, a pale smudge can be seen behind the attic glass. Zoom in, and it seems like a hand, not pressed to the glass, inside it. What unsettles most researchers isn't the supernatural conjecture, but the pattern. In the decades since 1965, 4 additional families have vanished in the Kent countryside. Each case bore eerie similarities to the Whitlocks: abrupt disappearance, no signs of struggle, and homes left unnervingly intact. 1979. The Mallorys, Southfleet. 1987. The Crenshaws, near Canterbury. 1998. The Attenberries, Ashford outskirts. 2014. The Byers, Folkestone. In every case, one common thread emerged: the presence of large antique mirrors in the home, often heirlooms, often recently uncovered or repositioned, and in 2 cases, scratched words were later found etched into window panes. No reflection. Takes form. In 2019, a doctoral candidate in folklore at Cambridge named Rowan Elbridge attempted to cross-reference the Whitlock records with other mirror-based myths. Her thesis explored the anthropomorphic mirror across cultures, the idea that a mirror is not simply reflective, but participatory. She cited Slavic legends of the other mouth, a being that mimics your speech a half-second too late, and English rural superstitions that warned of teaching your mirror to speak. But her most chilling discovery came from a 1794 sermon delivered in Essex, preserved in a private family Bible. "Guard thine looking-glass, for it is not the Lord's light it casts back, but thine own undoing. Mirrors do not show you what is, but what believes itself to be you." Rowan's thesis was rejected. She disappeared 6 months later during a hiking trip in the Yorkshire moors. All they found was her notebook, The last page featured a charcoal sketch. 3 children standing before a mirror, but their reflections did not match. In the drawing, one of the children had no reflection at all, just a smear of darkness with a hand outstretched, pressing against the inside of the glass. There is now an unofficial term among investigators, archivists, and paranormal researchers: Whitlocking. It refers to the complete disappearance of a person or group under circumstances suggestive of mirror-based phenomena. As of 2023, there are 17 such cases globally. Some believe it's a contagion, not biological, but perceptual. That once you've heard of it, once the idea enters your mind, you're vulnerable. You begin to see differently. Watch your reflection more closely. Wonder if it will move when you don't. And sometimes it does. Which brings us here, to you who have watched this long, who didn't look away. Perhaps you're thinking, well, it's just a story. And perhaps it is. Or perhaps that's what the story wants you to think. Look at your screen. Is it glass? Is your reflection faintly visible? What if I told you that's not you? That whatever stares back from that screen, that window, that mirror, isn't just copying, it's learning. And when it knows you well enough, your tilt of the head, your blink pattern, the timing of your sigh, it no longer needs you. Not physically. Not anymore. Because it's already taken your place. In one small way, and tomorrow it takes another. Until the people who love you start to say, "You've changed. You're different. You don't laugh like you used to." And by the time you notice, by the time you try to fight back, it's already smiling with your mouth, watching you from the other side, patient and ready to step through. They sealed Whitlock House for the final time in 2021. Concrete, steel, riveted plate, infrared sensors, all of it overseen by a private contractor hired through undisclosed channels. No local authorities were invited, no news crews alerted, just an unmarked van, a dozen workers in unbranded coveralls, and a long list of waivers nobody dared to read aloud. And then, just like that, the house was gone. Not demolished, just removed, fenced in, forgotten. But the echoes never left. A month later, a man named Daniel March, an urban explorer known for documenting forbidden buildings, uploaded a video titled "Inside the House They Tried to Erase." He claimed to have broken into the sealed remains of the Whitlock residence. The footage, now scrubbed from most platforms, was only 3 minutes long. Shot in night vision, shaky, disorienting. In it, you can make out the following. A long hallway, warped with mold and shadow. Children's drawings flapping against the wall despite no breeze. A cracked mirror, half shrouded, half exposed, propped against a rotting cradle. And at the end, barely visible in the gloom, a figure, still, silent, but unmistakably watching. Daniel never uploaded again. He was last seen in the Brighton train station 2 days later, pacing in front of a bathroom mirror muttering the same phrase, "It won't blink, it won't blink, it won't blink." The thing is, by then, the Whitlock story had taken on a life of its own, mutating, metastasizing across the internet. Message boards erupted with users sharing personal stories of reflections that lagged, faces that smiled too soon, or dreams where the mirror shows a room you've never been in. Most were dismissed as creepypasta. Others were pulled for violating platform policies, too graphic, too unsettling, too close to something. But in every thread, one phrase kept reappearing. They're still learning. This phrase, origin unknown, became the chilling motto of a growing community of mirror phobics who began covering every reflective surface in their homes. First with sheets, then blackout paint, then in some cases, with wood and nails. Among them was a woman named Eleanor Baines, a retired schoolteacher who'd taught in Dover during the 60s. She lived alone, suffered from mild dementia, and was mostly forgotten by her neighbors. Until the fire. When firefighters broke down her door, they found every inch of her bungalow covered in chalk symbols. Dozens of mirrors shattered, buried in sand-filled tubs, and in her bedroom, one single antique mirror left untouched, unbroken. Facing the bed, they found her body turned toward it, mouth open, hands lifted as if in prayer or terror. No one could decide which. On the glass, her final message traced in what investigators assumed was blood. "I am not the one who died." In the years since, the UK's missing persons database has flagged an unusual trend. A disproportionate number of disappearances from the Kent region list one last known location: home. No workplace, no travel plans, no goodbye notes, just vanished. From the safety of their bedrooms, from their kitchens, their showers, all with mirrors present, all at night. And in several cases, one curious note was logged by investigating officers. No fingerprints on the glass, not even the victims. That detail matters, because it suggests that no one touched the mirror. At least, not from this side. So what, then, are we to believe? That mirrors are haunted? That there's a curse? That the Whitlock family was the first victim in a long line of something older than science, older than religion? Maybe. Or maybe this is all just metaphor, a dark fairy tale for the digital age. A way to rationalize our growing unease with self-surveillance, identity, and the blurring line between image and self. Because, think about it. Every screen you stare into reflects you, not with glass, but with light. Your phone, your laptop, your television, they all present a version of you, curated, mirrored, slightly delayed, and maybe that delay is all something else ever needed. Not to haunt, but to replace. Here's what they won't teach in schools. The real horror isn't that the Whitlocks disappeared. It's that no one remembers them right. Their names, yes. Their house, sure. But their faces? Every police sketch, every AI reconstruction, every last known photo, they all contradict. Some show 4 children, others 5. Some swear there was a dog, others a grandfather. And yet, when you hold all the images up together, none match. They're not blurred, not damaged, just wrong, like copies of copies of copies. Something trying to look human, trying to look familiar, trying to be remembered, and failing. So, here's a question. If one day your family vanished without a trace, would you remember what they looked like, exactly, or would something already be inside your memory, editing, shifting, smiling when it shouldn't? Maybe that's why these stories matter. Not because they warn us of some monster waiting in the glass, but because they whisper a truth we're too frightened to face. That the monster might already be behind our eyes. There's only one photo left of the Whitlocks that no one can explain. Found in a parish donation box in 2006, it's a faded black and white print. A family of 5 standing outside a modest brick home. The parents in Sunday clothes. The children all smiling. Except one. The boy in the middle has no face, not blurred, not scratched, just blank, like the ink forgot to finish him. Or like he finished himself. Somewhere else. And standing just behind him, in the reflection of the window, a figure. Impossible to describe. Impossible to forget. There's a final letter. Never delivered. never opened by the family it was meant for. It sat for decades in a Royal Mail dead letter office, its destination smudged by water, its sender listed only as M. It was discovered in 2017 during a routine audit, filed among hundreds of mundane misroutes. But something about the paper, aged but intact, heavy with ink, drew a clerk's attention. The envelope bore no postage, no stamp, just a hand-scrawled note on the back. "If they are found, burn this." They didn't burn it. The letter was read. What follows is a partial transcript, verified by handwriting analysts and linguistic historians as written sometime between 1966 and 1970. The language is disjointed, the grammar peculiar, but the message is chillingly clear. To whomever bears witness, I have seen them. Not in dreams, not in visions, but in glass. They do not age. They do not blink. They smile when spoken to, but never first. Never first. Their names are not their names. The house was not their home. It was their nest, their shell, their disguise. They come to learn. They come to mimic. But their mimicry is flawed. Too perfect, too clean. They thought we wouldn't notice, but children know. That's why it started with Peter. He stopped sleeping. He stopped talking. Then one morning he pointed to the mirror and said, "Mom's in there, but she won't come out. The other one won't let her." That's when we knew we had stayed too long. But by then, it was too late. If you find them, don't speak, don't reflect, and above all, do not believe their eyes. Mirrors lie, but they never forget. M. No further information exists about the sender. No records, no fingerprints. Just that signature. And a mirror. In 2020, an independent filmmaker attempted to recreate the Whitlock mystery for a found-footage horror project. He located the supposed site, gathered interviews, reconstructed the family timeline, and disappeared 2 weeks after filming. His camera was found in a pawn shop in Leeds. No one knows how it got there. On the footage, the final shot shows the filmmaker walking through a dilapidated corridor, one lined with shattered mirror fragments taped to the walls, each angled just slightly, all converging toward one spot, an empty chair, and in the final frame, just before the battery dies, a glint of something stepping into view behind him. Not a shape. A reflection. Some say the Whitlocks were never real, that the house was just a wartime orphanage whose records were lost in a fire, that the family photos are AI composites seeded online to feed a growing mythos, that the M letter was a prank, that all of it is just one long hallucination fueled by urban dread and collective paranoia. And maybe that's true, but if so, why do people keep seeing them? Across England, across Europe even, reports still surface of strange, silent families. Always 3 children. Always a woman with perfect hair. Always a man who wears his smile like a badge. They knock on doors. They ask for directions. They stand too still, they linger too long. And their eyes? Too round, too patient. Like they're listening not to your words, but to the space between them. Here's a final detail for you, buried in an old Kent County report from 1964, labeled "Noise Complaint, Unresolved." A neighbor had contacted the authorities to complain about strange sounds coming from the Whitlock property. Not screams, not music, just one thing. Children repeating something, over and over. Couldn't make out the words, just rhythm, like a chant, or maybe practicing lines. Practicing, not playing, not learning. Practicing, as if rehearsing how to pass, how to replace. And that brings us back to the real question. Not what happened to the Whitlocks, but who they were to begin with. Because if a family can move into a village, live among neighbors, pass for years as normal, until the day they vanish and leave behind nothing but reflections and questions, what does that say about our ability to know each other? To know ourselves? Can you really trust that the people around you are who they say they are? Can you trust you're who you say you are? Or have the mirrors been watching too long and learning too well? This isn't just about ghosts or demons or doppelgangers. It's about identity. It's about the echo. The idea that if you stare into something long enough, it doesn't just show you back, it changes you. Subtly. Rewrites the lines of your face, alters your smile, makes your laugh just a little too loud, your silence a little too deep. Until one day, your reflection moves before you do. And you wonder, was I always this way? Or did something behind the glass make you so? So tonight, when you brush your teeth, take a closer look. Not at your face, but at what's just behind your eyes. Does it blink when you do? Does it look too perfect? And when the lights go out, does it smile? Some stories aren't meant to be solved, only remembered, because forgetting them is exactly what they want. And remembering might be the only thing that keeps us real.